Hello, today I'll be talking about the ISTE standards for technology and education for students. So this refers to the international standards for technology and education. So ISTE refers to the technology guidelines in learning. In this presentation, I'll be talking about the standards that relate to students. So they have ones that relate to students and teachers, but these standards have a set of frameworks that define the types of abilities students should possess in order to use technology in an educational setting. So I'm going to go into each of these frameworks and explain everything. Each framework, there are 7 frameworks. The first one is empowered learner. So each of them kind of divides into 4 separate subjects. So 1.1a is learning goals. So this refers to students using technology to make their own goals, make a plan, and track their progress while they're learning, and then go back and reflect on their learning. This really emphasizes the student doing this on themselves and not really going to the teacher. The next one is customized learning environments. So again, the student is choosing themselves which resources and platforms best match their learning styles. So this can refer to them subscribing to a certain YouTube channel or going on online study groups, really taking their learning into their own hands. The next one is feedback to improve practice. The students are using technology to get feedback from their classmates or their teachers on their work, and they're using it to improve. So this could be Google Classroom or any website where they can get comments on their work and refer to it and improve. The next one is technology fundamentals, and this is that students know the basics of how technology works and how to effectively use it. They know how to troubleshoot if something goes wrong, as simple as knowing how to troubleshoot the Wi-Fi. So an example of using empowered learning is the student wants to keep learning and they seek out resources themselves, like a podcast or a video, and they become more engaged in their learning. They're less of a backseat learner. The next framework that we see is digital citizen. So this is when students recognize that they are responsible for their online behavior. So the first group we see is 1.2a, a digital footprint. So students are managing their digital identity and they understand that everything they post has a lasting impact. We are also looking at their online interactions, so students contribute to online communities positively. So in discussion groups or chat rooms, they're leaving comments on videos. We want them all to be positive. Next, we see safeguard well-being. So students protect their digital identities and manage their passwords, personal information. They're aware of everything they're doing online, and they don't spend too much time online. And last but not least, we see digital privacy, which refers to students protecting their identities, managing their passwords. They're not sharing too much on social media. They're not giving away any of their personal information. So an example of digital citizen is that the student engages in respectful, safe conversations. This could be like a discussion board. They can also learn more about security and how to protect themselves online. We are looking at knowledge constructor. So the student is creating a variety of resources using digital tools to construct knowledge, produce something, and make a meaningful experience for themselves. So the first thing they might look at is effective research strategies. So the student knows how to look for resources to better support their learning. Next, we look at evaluate information. So the students will observe whether the information they find is accurate. They might look for the origin, the relevance, and they want to also see if the source is biased in any way. So next, they will curate information. Students use all the information they find and they synthesize it into their own conclusions. They're taking all that information and making it themselves. And next, we look at explore real-world issues. So the students explore real-world issues in a classroom setting. So an example might be exploring bionic arms in the classroom and then going into medicine and going into that field and practicing it in the real world. Another example could be a forensics class and then going into police work and actually doing it in the real world. So they're taking all these real world issues and applying their learning to different situations when they go out in the real world. So an example of knowledge constructor might be that the student is researching a topic, they're making their own conclusions, and they're using all of the research that they have to create an analysis. The analysis could be a graph or a presentation. Innovative designer is a set of guidelines that focuses on students using technology to design solutions and understand the design process. So the design process is when students begin the process of designing solutions, which can be brainstorming ideas, they could be creating a prototype, or they could just be experimenting. So an important part is design constraints. This means that the student understands that when they're designing, they have limitations, which could be the time they have, the cost, they don't have as much money to make their design, they don't have the materials maybe. So a big part is that the students understand how to tackle these issues and these constraints. Next refers to prototypes. So students create early versions of a product or a solution to test their ideas. And next is open-ended problems. Students are tackling real-world problems, and they use technology and resources to experiment and come up with the best solution. So an example of an innovative designer could be a student creating a poster using Canva for recycling in their school. The student will research the topic, then they will design the poster, which could be part of the design process. They'll receive feedback from their peers through Google Docs, and then finally display their poster. So this refers to prototypes and then getting feedback, and then open-ended problems, which is a real-world issue of recycling. Critical thinker refers to how students learn how to use technology and critical thinking to solve problems. So problem definitions is when students learn how to define a problem, and then they can take that issue or problem and break it down to solve it. Next is data sets. So students learn how to gather and use data. They might collect their own or use existing. The main thing is that students will analyze this data and draw conclusions. Next is decompose problems. So students take big problems and break them down into more manageable pieces. So an example could be building an app and breaking it down into different components. So first you want to see the data, then you want to look at designing, and then you want to see how you're going to display. Really decomposing or deconstructing each part of a problem. Next is algorithmic thinking. So students learn how to create step-by-step instructions on how to solve problems. It's almost like thinking like a programmer. So an example could be that students are tasked with creating a game, and then they must apply computational thinking, breaking down the problem, creating algorithms, testing, and solving solutions. Native communicator focuses on how students can become effective communicators and use technology to collaborate. So the first thing is to choose a platform. So they want to choose the right platform to share their ideas. They understand that there's different platforms for different purposes, such as YouTube for videos, website for information. Original and remixed works. So students are encouraged to create their own work, but they also want to take existing work and make it something new. So this is also important that students are aware of copyright laws. And next we see communicate complex ideas. So students should be able to take complex issues such as scientific theories, and they should be able to explain them using digital tools such as videos or websites. And to customize the message, so students want to tailor their message to their audience. So whether it be if you are talking to a peer or you are writing an email to a teacher, you want to adjust your tone, style, and your format based on your audience. So an example could be a student creating a podcast as a project. So they have to do all the work themselves. They have to research, write, record, and edit their project. The last framework is global collaboration, which students learn how to use technology to interact with learners. So we have a global connection. So students are using technology to connect with different countries. We have multiple viewpoints. Students are engaging in collaborative work with multiple points of view. They are protecting, their teams. They are being compassionate and respectful. And then we have local and global issues where students are researching issues and using technology to collaborate with others to make a difference. So an example could be just a student collaborating with people from other countries, could be through Zoom or discussion boards. And when to use it, so you should use ISTE standards when you are creating a lesson plan. You can help students stay safe online, you can check student work, create project or activities while using digital tools. So it's important to pick a learning goal, choose the right standard, add tech tools, plan activities, and check for understanding. So you want to choose the right standard when deciding what you want students to learn. You want to choose one of the 7 standards to match your lesson. And then you can go about adding tech tools, choosing tools like Google Docs, Canva, whatever you are comfortable with. And then you're going to plan the activity. So plan an activity to allow students to practice the skill from the standard that you picked. And last but not least, as always, you want to check for understanding. You can use a rubric to see if tech solved the problem, and you just want to see if they understand what you're doing.